وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على ختم الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Alhamdulillah, today we're having our introductory class for our course on Introduction to Islamic Beliefs, which is a level 1 course in our Islamic Studies curriculum at Seeker's Guidance. And in this class, we'll be looking at one of the well-established classical works of mainstream Islamic beliefs. This is a short didactic poem called al-Amali by Imam Sirajuddin al-Ushi. And this, of course, points also to something of the beautiful diversity of our faith, because we will see that this city of Ush, modern day Osh, is in Kyrgyzstan, not far from the border of Uzbekistan. Right? And we'll be looking a little bit about this distinguished author, Imam Sirajuddin al-Ushi. But more important than that, we're going to begin first by looking at the importance of the subject matter, the subject of Islamic beliefs. And they say that the importance of a subject is in accordance with what that subject is about. And by that consideration, there is no subject that is more important than the science of Islamic beliefs, because its primary subject is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is necessary to believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes and His actions, and the other points of belief are all ascribed to Allah. What we believe about the prophets of Allah, what we believe about Allah's day of reckoning, and about heaven and hell, which are manifestations of divine mercy and divine justice, as we'll see. So, this is why this is of the most important of subjects in as relates to its subject matter, but also as relates to its consequence. Why? Because salvation is contingent upon sound beliefs. Right? Salvation is contingent upon sound beliefs. This is why this is such a critical subject. Now, in this class, we will be looking at this text with a few particular aims. Right? The first is that we'll be taking this text of the al-Amali, right? The beginning of, and literally the text, Amali is the beginning of the transcription, right? But it's also known as the poem in Islamic beliefs, right? That rhymes in lam. But the first aim of it is to know what we believe. To know with clarity what we believe about Allah and His attributes and the ruling and the issues that we need to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we believe about the prophets and their attributes, and what we believe about matters of the hereafter. And there's a number of issues related to beliefs that come up. And we'll try to appreciate with that to understand why we believe these points of belief. So we'll connect them to the primary texts that have come regarding these beliefs, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Third, and this is important for us as students of knowledge, or even as Muslims seeking to be cultivated, educated Muslims, to understand the foundations of scholarly method. There is an approach and a methodology by which the scholars have understood revelation. And we have been commanded to approach revelation through sound means. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of remembrance if you know not. What is the straight path? Right? صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. The path of those whom you have blessed, bestowed your blessings before us. Right? It is a trodden path. And we've emphasized that in the level 1 course on how Islam works, understanding the methodology of Islam. And that's a very important course. And that course also, we touched upon many elements related to mainstream method in approaching belief, right? And that would be a very useful complement for someone who's not taking this class yet. It's not a requirement, but it is certainly a complement and a supplement. So to understand the foundation of the scholarly method, and by appreciating the scholarly method, we will gain clarity about how our religion works and why we believe what we believe, but it also gives us confidence and clarity about the way of mainstream Islam. Right? We will also look at appreciating nuance, right? Appreciating nuance. There's a great wisdom and beauty in both the Quran and the Sunnah, having things that are absolutely clear and others matters that require consideration and reflection. As Allah has commanded us to consider, فَاعْتَبِرُوا, so consider. Right? And He refers to us as people, يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ, or those of you of insight, those of you of consciousness. Right? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, do you not think? Do you not reason? Do you not reflect? Do you not ponder deeply? If everything was plain vanilla simple, there would be nothing to reflect upon in the book of Allah and in prophetic teachings. But all of these 4 aims of this course feed into the 5th and highest aim, which is to cultivate faith and to cultivate certitude. Right? To cultivate faith and to cultivate certitude. Right? Because without that, this is all prattle. Right? It wouldn't be of meaning. It would not be of consequence. Right? To cultivate faith and certitude. And in doing so, right? In doing so, right? Because many of us believe, but when you understand what you believe and why you believe it, your faith gets stronger. And you gain the tools through studying a text like this to be able to reflect, to be able to act faithfully. So your prayer is not just an outward action, but your prayer is a faithful act. Every act of worship or devotion or remembrance or supplication or any good that we do, right? If we do it with this turning to Allah in a state of consciousness cultivated by our study of the science of Islamic beliefs. So when we turn to Allah, we have degrees of consciousness of Allah. Every act becomes an act of faith. So we don't just go to work saying, I'm going to work for the sake of Allah and just like that. But we are conscious of the reality that it is Allah who provides, Allah who sustains, and we have these meanings of faith that we learn, we strive to live them, right? To cultivate faith and certitude. So in that regards, it befits us to reflect, and this is something that I'd like to leave you with as a reflection exercise for for what we can call lesson 0, which is to reflect on the metaphor of the tree. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us in the Quran, in Surah Ibrahim, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. Do you not see how Allah compares, has struck a comparison, right? كَلِمَةً طَيِّبَةً كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ. The good word is like the good tree. أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ. Its root is firm. وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. And its branches are in the sky. Right? Likewise, the believer, right? The good word is La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. It is rooted in the good soil of a heart that's seeking purity, that is sincere, that is true, that rids itself of the qualities odious to Allah, strives to adorn itself by the qualities of sincere servants of God. The good word is planted in the soil of our heart. It is cultivated through worship, through devotion, through remembrance, through supplication, through reflection, through recitation of the Quran, through acts of faith, right? So when we do anything, we do it for Allah in these states of consciousness, through our intentions. And that cultivates uprightness, istiqamah, and whose branches are in the sky. That points to the reality that faith would call us to yearn for the divine. But also, how do we yearn for the divine? Like the tree, it's as if it's, the branches of the tree are our good deeds, but the good deeds are in the sky because they are reaching for the sky of eternity. It gives fruit in every season by leave of its Lord, right? This and the subsequent verse gives us to reflect, and this is why, this is the purpose of the study of Islamic beliefs, right? To plant, to root our faith soundly, and to cultivate and nourish and strive to perfect our faith. What is the aim? The aim is to reach a state of faith, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tara, to worship Allah as though you behold Him, to have certitude, right? فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. If you do not behold Him yet, then to know that He beholds you. Now this blessed text, Bad' al-Amali, that we'll be looking at, is a brief text, right? It's less than 70 lines. I think 68 lines. But it is significant, right? And it's been taught for centuries and has many commentaries on it as well. The text itself, Bad' al-Amali, and we'll be sharing, alhamdulillah, I did a fresh translation of the text. I will be sharing the translation and notes related to the translation, is a 68-line poem. And the reason it's a poem is to facilitate memorization. And also because poetry in Arabic is eloquent, so it makes it memorable, right? And it's a good text to if someone seeks to memorize, for them to strive to memorize. The text is also significant because the author represents, the author was one of the great imams of the Hanafi school and the Maturidi tradition of mainstream Islamic theology. Right? There are two great schools of Islamic theology: the Maturidi school of the Hanafis, and we'll be talking about these briefly, and the Ash'ari school. But Imam Sirajuddin Ali ibn Uthman al-Ushi, right? They differ exactly when he died. Some say he died in the year 575 after the Hijrah. Others say that it is 569. So there's a little bit of difference of opinion. Ali ibn Uthman al-Ushi. And Ush is a town or city from the region of Farghana, right? Of Farghana in Central Asia, right? And it's modern Kyrgyzstan, right? In modern day Kyrgyzstan, it's the largest city in Kyrgyzstan. It's not, Kyrgyzstan is not the most populated of the Central Asian republics in our times. It has a population, from what I've been able to gather, of less than 500,000 people, right? So, but it's still, and it's an ancient city actually. They say, Allahu Alam, that it's a city that's over 3,000 years old. Right? It's an old historic city. And these Central Asian lands, right, were places where Islamic scholarship had become deeply and solidly rooted. Deeply and solidly rooted. Right? So many great imams were produced in this region of Farghana. Right? And Imam al-Ushi wrote one of the great works of fatawa, of legal verdicts in the Hanafi school, which is called al-Fatawa al-Sirajiyya, because his honorific name was Sirajuddin, literally the light-giving lamp of religion. Sirajuddin Ali ibn Uthman al-Ushi. But his book of fatwa is not called the Fatawa al-Ushiyya, because that would be a bit heavy on the ear. They call it the Fatawa al-Sirajiyya. That's a great work, it's still in print, and it's frequently referenced. And he wrote a number of other books, including a work in Arabic literature and poetry. And so this poem itself is recognized for its clarity, right? One, for its clarity. He was known to be a good poet, right? So it's brief, it's clear, it's also representative of mainstream views, right? It transmits the core teachings of the Hanafi school, the Maturidi school of Islamic beliefs. It's also a useful starting point in one's journey of the study of mainstream Islamic beliefs. Why? Because while it opens a range of issues, it doesn't go into too many details, right? But it does open a number of technical points that bear mention. Okay? Now, when we share the translation with you, you'll see that some points may seem to be details here and there, right? But that's part of the nature of scholarship, right? That scholarship is not just about telling you what matters, but it's also giving you tools of understanding. So we'll contextualize those sections. That it'll tell you what do we mean when we say a thing. Who cares? I know what a thing is. A thing is something. But that's not really a definition. But these have significance. Why? Because they relate to points that arise in the Quran, issues that arise in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they safeguard sound understanding. So that it helps appreciate why we affirm what we affirm. So it's a good starting point. It's similar in size to the Kharid al-Bahiyya, which we also offer in level 1, according to the Ash'ari school. This text, I'll save you the details, but I didn't really want to study it when I was in Damascus, but Shaykh Hassan al-Hindi made me study it. So I read the work with its commentary with Shaykh Hassan al-Hindi, who'd studied this text both with Shaykh Adib al-Kallas and also with Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Shaghuri. So that's our chain of transmission of this text from Shaykh Hassan al-Hindi, by study of the text, but also transmitting the science of Aqidah, of Maturidi Aqidah, also directly from Shaykh Adib al-Kallas as well. Typically, a traditional syllabus of Islamic beliefs according to the Maturidi school, or it's also called the Hanafi school. Frequently, you'd start with a brief primer, and so we'll be studying al-Amali, and we'll be relying primarily on the commentary of Mullah Ali al-Qari, who's a distinguished polymath of Islamic studies, a great Hanafi jurist, a great scholar of tafsir, of the hadith sciences, a specialist in the sciences of Quranic recitation, and wrote great works in spirituality and many other subjects. A real great imam. And though not a specialized theologian, wrote very clear and very beneficial works in theology, amongst them his commentary on al-Amali. Then after that, in Damascus, they would typically study, they would frequently study Mullah Ali al-Qari's commentary on Fiqh al-Akbar. Fiqh al-Akbar is attributed to Imam Abu Hanifa, and Mullah Ali al-Qari has a clear commentary on it. In other parts of the Muslim world, they would frequently study a work called Al-Bidayah by Imam Nuruddin al-Sabuni. And this work is particularly worthy of note because there is an excellent translation and commentary on it by our dear and esteemed Shaykh Faraz. But Shaykh Faraz Khan of Zaytuna is also taught here with seekers and is an old friend. And it's a very good work, Introduction to Islamic Theology, published by Zaytuna Press. And it's a very useful work. It's not a requirement for this course, but there's a lot more detail in it, but we'll frequently be referring to parts of that because it is a very, very good work. But it's sort of an intermediate, it's a second level text. You'll notice it goes into a lot more details. And then at a third level, of course, the texts of any particular school are so many. But in Damascus, they would frequently study, after that, the commentary on the Aqidah al-Tahawiyya by Allama Abdul Ghani al-Maydani al-Ghunaymi, who also wrote a commentary in Hanafi fiqh on Mukhtasar al-Quduri called al-Lubab. And then after that, one goes to Sharh al-Nasafiyya, Imam Sa'ad al-Din al-Taftazani's commentary on the Aqaid of Imam al-Nasafi, which is the earlier Nasafi, of course. So this sort of gives us where we would be in the curriculum, and we intend, inshallah, to cover each of these works. At level 4, Shaykh our dear Shaykh Ahmed al-Azhari is teaching that presently. But this is the way that, you in building a tree, you don't say, okay, tree, grow. You have to give a tree time to grow. Right? Otherwise, it becomes unstable. And we've referred to this idea of a school or a tradition, right? So we'll be looking at mainstream Islamic beliefs from a particular scholarly method, which is the Hanafi or Maturidi school of theology, right? Just as in Islamic law, there are interpretive schools who apply principles of textual interpretation to primary texts to derive legal rulings. Likewise, the schools of Islamic theology have an interpretive method that they follow to affirm beliefs through decisive proofs, right? Textual and rational, right? And the Maturidi school of theology is really an application of the Hanafi usul al-fiqh, the Hanafi principles of textual interpretation to matters related to belief in Allah and His Messenger and matters of the hereafter. Its founder is considered Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, who was born in the year 238 and died in the year 333 after the Hijrah. And he is the one who synthesized the school. This is really a transmission of the way, the theological way of Imam Abu Hanifa. And Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi has, in his shortest chain of transmission, has two people between him and Imam Abu Hanifa. Because amongst those whom he took from, whom Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi took from, is someone called Muhammad ibn Muqatil al-Razi, who took directly from, who's a great Imam, who took directly from Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani, who's one of the two great students of Abu Hanifa. Muhammad al-Hasan died in the year 189, who took from Imam Abu Hanifa, who died in the year 150 after the Hijrah. So in this chain of transmission, Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi has two people between him and Imam Abu Hanifa, Muhammad ibn Muqatil al-Razi and Muhammad ibn Hasan al-Shaybani. He also has a number of other, he has many chains of transmission, of course, but this is the highest. And this school has its distinguishing characteristic on how what is the role of reason with respect to revelation. And we're going to touch upon that gradually as we go through the work. But in general, Imam Abu Hanifa was very careful to avoid speculation in matters of theology. And they emphasized, Shaykh Adib Kallas would always mention, rahimahullah ta'ala, that Sadatuna al-Maturidiyya أثبت قدما في التفويض من غيرهم. Right? The Maturidi way is very firm on consigning ultimate meanings to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So particularly when we come to matters related to sifat al-mutashabihat, those verses that are unclear in the meanings, etc., to affirm what is affirmed, but not more than that, to negate what is negated, but then to consign the meanings to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless there's a compelling reason to assign a specific meaning. Now, the differences between the two main schools of Islamic theology, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, are minor, secondary, and in non-fundamental matters. These are both mainstream, and the differences between them are differences in nuance. Most of the differences return to differences in how things are named and classified, and how investigations, right? So we will see some of them as we go through the text, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Right? And our focus, though, of course, is not to emphasize what the differences are. Our emphasis is on those points of knowing what we believe, why we believe it, with clarity, to appreciate scholarly method, appreciate the nuances related to these investigations, to acquire some of the toolkit of Islamic scholarship, and to cultivate our faith and certitude. So this class will be covering the text over 12 weeks, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll be sharing the translation with you. And for those who want to follow along in Arabic, we'll also share the translation We will also share the commentary of Mullah Ali al-Qari, but we're not reading the commentary. I'll sometimes refer to things in it or translate from it, but here and there. Don't, even if you're a student of knowledge, don't lose yourself in the commentary. The purpose of commentaries is to clarify. Our goal is not to read the commentary per se, but to understand the issues first. So that's what we wanted to cover today, to introduce this important text, an important first step in our journey of strengthening, deepening, and clarifying our core beliefs. And in the course, of course, there are some of the contemporary issues related to proofs for belief in God, etc., that we will touch upon without necessarily going into them at great length. But we will touch upon some of them. Those are the subject matter of classes that come after this. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. We have some opportunity for questions related to this, if there are any questions. Okay, so we'll stop there. بإذن الله تعالى. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.